This is my 5th decade of watching Aussie rules football, and as each season passes by, I become more cognizant of the fact that premierships are bloody hard to win. This one moment of glory was the culmination of an 8-year-long journey. When Chris Fagan was appointed as head coach in October of 2016, only 4 of the players who became premiership heroes were on the Lions list. Dane Zorko, Ryan Lester, Harris Andrews, who had just completed his 2nd season, and Eric Hipwood, who had just finished his 1st. Fagan inherited a team that had only won 3 matches in 2016, finishing 17th. In his first season in charge, they would claim the wooden spoon. A year later, they would again win just the 5 games, and many questioned whether this mild-mannered Tasmanian schoolteacher, who had never played the game at the highest level, had what it took to lead these young men up the ladder. Those questions were answered in 2019, as the Lions rose from 15th to 2nd on the ladder. Unfortunately, they ran into a Richmond side that was establishing a dynasty and a seasoned Giants team that was playing in its 4th consecutive finals series. The Lions would be bundled out in straight sets in front of their home crowd, the first of many scars they would accumulate along the way. Many pundits saw the Lions' 2020 campaign as an abject failure, a golden opportunity the likes of which they would never see again, squandered. In a shortened season, Brisbane would again finish 2nd after the home and away season, having played 13 of their 17 matchups in Queensland. In week 1 of the finals, they would clear their first hurdle and record a victory over the reigning premiers in Richmond. With a Gabba Grand Final just within reach, the Lions were installed as premiership favourites ahead of their prelim matchup against Geelong. From cellar dwellers and 5 consecutive bottom 4 finishes to outright flag favourites in just 2 years. But their opponents in the Cats had been on their own arduous journey, having lost prelims in 2013, 16, 17 and 19. Geelong were battle-hardened and ready to slay their own demons. These young Lions had experienced September heartache the previous season, but it paled in comparison to what the Cats had been through. Less than a goal separated the two sides at half-time, but Geelong would kick away in the second half and inflict another finals wound upon Fagan's troops. But they were learning lessons. In 2020, they learned how to win a final. They also learned that it takes more than precocious talent once the season was down to the final 4. It took a ferocity of will and determination that they didn't quite have yet. There was cause for optimism in 2021 when Joe Danaher joined the ranks. But the season would again end in heartache. After squeezing into 4th place, the Lions ran into eventual premiers Melbourne in week 1 and came up short. Week 2 was a disaster, as the Dogs came from 18 points down late in the 3rd to snatch a 1-point victory. The Doggies had ripped the heart out of the Lions and left them bleeding out in front of a despondent home crowd. A 4th finals loss at the Gabba in just 3 seasons. But this one felt fatal. If they couldn't win finals at home whilst favoured to do so, how were they going to travel to Melbourne when they weren't favoured and expect to win? With a finals record of 1-5, the Jungle Drums were again beating around Chris Fagan, with many in the media questioning whether he had the skills required to lead Brisbane to the promised land. Having re-signed at the beginning of 2021 through until the end of 2023, the Lions backed Fagan in for the 2022 season. It was time to see what this group was really made of. Brisbane burst out of the blocks in season 22, winning 8 of their opening 9 games. Heading into round 23, they faced reigning premiers in the Demons, with the winner guaranteed a top 2 position and home ground advantage during September. In front of a packed Gabba crowd under the Friday night spotlight, the Lions would wilt once again, going down by 10 goals. Those who had questioned their big game bona fides were feeling justified once more. The loss saw Brisbane drop to 6th and another home elimination final against the Tigers. Now, whilst they would salute in controversial circumstances and officially end Richmond's dynasty, no one gave them a chance of beating the D's in a cutthroat semi-final at the MCG. But perhaps this is just what they needed. After so many home finals where they were heavily favoured, the Lions finally got a taste of September in Melbourne and went in with nothing to lose as massive underdogs. In a preview of what was to come this final series, trailing by 22 points at halftime, Brisbane threw caution to the wind and cut Melbourne's much heralded defence to ribbons. Led by Eric Hipwood, who played the game of his life, the Lions would prevail and tick off the next big milestone on their journey, a finals win at the G in front of 60,000 people. A week later at the same venue, they would be humbled by a familiar foe. After adding a further prelim loss in 2021 on the back of the 2020 grand final loss, a Geelong side with 1,000 more games worth of experience put the Lions to the sword. Now, if they were feeling sorry for themselves, they needed only to look at their opposition for inspiration. The Lions had lost 2 prelims in 3 seasons, both to the Cats. Geelong had lost a grand final, 5 prelims, 1 semi and 2 elimination finals in the previous 10 seasons. This game is brutal. It takes fortitude, resilience, and a bit of luck to even make a grand final, let alone win one. The Lions needed to dig a bit deeper to find that extra ounce of resolve, because come prelim final night of 2023, they would need all the resilience they could muster. The Brisbane Lions took care of business in 2023. They would once again finish top 2, winning 17 games and gaining home ground advantage. There would be no slip-ups in week 1 of the finals, as they ruthlessly took apart the Power at the Gabba, setting up a home prelim against the Blues, who were on the initial steps of their own foray into finals football. When Charlie Curnow goaled at the 20-minute mark of the first quarter, the game looked done for, as Carlton led by 30 points and were all over the Lions. Lesser clubs would have broken. The weight of past failings too much to bear. Brisbane steeled themselves and ground out a tough victory, full of character and merit. They were finally off to the big dance and a date with the irrepressible Magpies, who had made a habit of winning close games of footy. A team made up from a core of players who had been on their own journey, having lost a grand final by less than a kick in 2018 and a prelim by a solitary point in 2022. The stage was set for an epic, and it did not disappoint. In a seesawing battle filled with some outrageous highlights, it was anyone's game right up until the final siren. Charlie Cameron kicked the first goal of the final quarter at the 18-minute mark to put the Lions in front. But the Pies would answer immediately and held on for a 4-point victory. Now, history is littered with teams that simply don't recover from their grand final scars. The Crows capitulated in the second half of the 2017 decider and haven't made the finals since. The Dockers got within a couple of goals of the all-conquering Hawks in 2013 and haven't been near it since. The Saints got as close as you can get to winning it 2 years in a row and then bottomed out completely over the subsequent 15 years. The Powers still haven't recovered from the mauling the Cats gave them in 2007, whilst the Pies themselves sunk to the bottom 4 in the aftermath of the 2018 heartbreak, and it took a change of coach for them to reset and go again. The wounds received during this devastation can either make or break a club. Those who are weak implode. They point fingers and blame. They let the fear of repeated failure creep into their collective psyches. They go to water. The strong clubs bunker down, learn their lessons, whether it be time management and preparation in the week leading up, making the most of opportunities, or simply minimising reckless mistakes. They weather the storm. They don't let the outside noise infiltrate their walls. They grit their teeth and get back to work. And that's what the Brisbane Lions did in 2024. And it's what makes them an unbelievably strong football club. When Brisbane started the 2024 season at 2-5, they had every excuse to pack it in and give up on each other. And according to Dane Zorko, they almost did.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll let you in a little secret. At round 12, I think we had the bye. Myself, Joe and Brian Lester sat down with Harris Andrews and we said, might be time we start playing the kids. We might have to turn to next year. If that's the case, it's been fun. But we come up with a real clear plan that day that we weren't going to go down that path. There was still so much football to go. And every week for the last 14 weeks, we've caught up as a group. We added Josh Dunkley to that fray, who is another senior figure and has been in these big moments. And we just talk through everything every week. We catch up for coffee, and we really wanted to make a difference and impact this season.
Now again, this just goes to show the strength of character and leadership that resides within the four walls of the Brisbane Lions Football Club. The maturity it takes for those leaders to have those difficult conversations should not be understated. The willingness to self-sacrifice and look to the future for the betterment of the club speaks volumes. After round 14, the Lions were still in 13th position on the ladder. To put 60 unanswered points on the Blues in an elimination final was a remarkable achievement. To fight back from 7 goals down away from home against the Giants was a remarkable achievement. To stare down their bogey side in the Cats, who had once again built a match-winning lead at half-time and run over the top of them, is a remarkable achievement. To be premiers just 3 months after they were bottom 6 is an historical achievement. That they were able to put it all together and play a flawless brand of football, arguably their best game in the Fagan era, on the biggest stage of all, is even more commendable. This one perfect game took 8 long years to create. It was a pleasure to watch those 8 years of hard work and utter disappointment reach the crescendo that was the Brisbane Lions masterpiece. People questioned whether they were mentally tough enough, whether Hipwood and Danaher were serious enough, whether Fagan had the tactical nous to go toe-to-toe with Scott and Longmire. All those questions and more were emphatically answered on Saturday. As a neutral, I could not be happier for them. It was a premiership done the hard way, the right way, well and truly earned. It also helps that 6 weeks out from the finals, they were my tip to win it all. My tip to win it all is the Lions. They have the talent, the form, and the motivation after last year's grand final heartbreak. Now I'm more excited about the data than I am about tipping the winner. It just reiterated my thoughts that a premiership team needs to have the quantity and quality aspects of their game in order, which is what this graph measured. When the form suggested that Brisbane and Hawthorn were the only teams surging towards the upper right quadrant, it made sense to me that they would both feature heavily come September. Alternatively, I copped some flack from Freo supporters when I ruled them out, but the data showed that they had slipped in form, and that's how it played out. So where did our teams that won finals this year end up on our graph? Here we can see that 4 of our 5 finals winners sit inside the upper right quadrant, whilst the Power managed to win from the bottom right quadrant. So let's plug all of the teams in and see where they land. I think what's interesting to note is that every Premier since 2000 has had a positive inside 50 differential of at least +2. If a side can't gain territory and generate more entries than the opposition, then they just aren't a serious threat. Teams like the Giants, Blues and Pies were efficient enough with their method, but could not create enough volume. Only one of our 50 grand finalists over the past 25 seasons has had a negative inside 50 differential, and that was the 2019 Giants, who caused a massive upset in the prelim in the wet against the Pies. It's something to keep an eye on for your team next season. According to this data, if they have a negative inside 50 differential, they have a 2% chance of making a grand final and a 0% chance of winning it. The same can be said of teams in the bottom right quadrant. Teams that rely on repeat entries without much emphasis on method tend to fall short when the prelims roll around. Hello, Port Adelaide. The 2016 Dogs are the only statistical outlier here, but their differential did sit at plus 10 in an open season. What this data has shown me is that if the difference between a team's offensive and defensive efficiency is strong, and they can consistently create more entries than their opposition, then their game is in good order and will stand up in September. Fans of the Cats, Dockers and Hawks should be buoyed by the fact that their teams were in this window. The Dogs were in it for the majority of the year before slipping out late. The Giants and Blues fluctuated in and out all season and are capable. The Pies snuck in late before dropping away in the last few weeks. And this leads me back to my original point, that premierships are bloody hard to win. Brisbane's masterpiece was 8 years in the making. Are they content with that perfect day, or do they want more? The talent is there, but is the drive? Will Levi Ashcroft, Kitty Coleman, the Big O and Tom Doedee push them to keep improving? What if Joe Danaher does retire? Where does that leave them? Is a second grand final belting in 3 years going to make or break the Swans? The Power have lost 3 prelims in 5 years. Are they ready to dig in and be resilient and continue their journey? The Cats coughed up a 5-goal lead in a prelim at home. Will that drive them to go one better? The Giants had match-winning leads against both grand finalists and lost last year's prelim to the eventual premiers by a point. Clearly, they are good enough. But will all that heartbreak force them into their shells, or will they bounce back even harder? The Dogs have lost 4 elimination finals and a granny in the last 6 years. Are they ready to be ruthless and put their mark on the competition? Will the Hawks progress further, with a tougher draw and more pressure on them? Can the Hunters withstand being hunted? The Blues have lost a prelim, and now an elimination final to the Lions. Will they be ready to take it to the champs in their 3rd crack at it? Can the Pies rekindle the spark and find the spunk that made them so irrepressible in 2022 and 2023? The Dockers have had a long journey under Longmuir and made finals once. Are they ready to reach their potential and create some history for the club? The Saints came home like a freight train. Can they carry that form into 2025? Will some additions and another pre-season under Dimmer inspire the Suns towards September? Are the Bombers strong enough to play out a full season right to the end? The Crows have been down for half a dozen years and have shown faith in Matty Nicks. Are they ready to bounce? Can the D's put their off-field dramas behind them and get back to the defensive juggernaut they were? There are so many stories and so many journeys in the mix that prove just how difficult it is to win a flag. This season was the 5th consecutive year of having a different premier. 6 in a row has only ever happened twice in VFL AFL history. The last time being between 2003 and 2008, when the Lions, Power, Swans, Eagles, Cats and Hawks saluted in consecutive years. I, for one, can't wait to see what season 2025 has in store, and whether we will see 6 different premiers in a row. Thanks for everyone who watched and subscribed throughout my first year on YouTube. I've really enjoyed the experience and look forward to putting out more content. A broken laptop has kept me out of business for the past 2 months, and I'm also learning a new editing software. So it's been a frustrating period not being able to post during the business end of the season. But we are back firing on all cylinders. Stay tuned for season reviews, draft and free agency commentaries, tributes and flashbacks. And thanks as always for watching AFL Insight. If you haven't already, please be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.